Senator Jackson, you got two more.
I do. Just warming up. All right. Thank you. Won't you sit in there? Are you gonna sit in there?
Please present on whichever one you choose to.
How about starting with SB 122, the CEQA bill? Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. SB 122 is a very modest but practical measure designed to bring the California Environmental Quality Act, otherwise known as CEQA, into the 21st century. It will save time and money and make CEQA more efficient and accessible to the public. And I would like to restate that what this bill does is it makes CEQA more efficient and more accessible. That is its very modest goal. This is not a Christmas tree for all the things that are good or bad about CEQA. This is what I would really call the lowest hanging fruit, which is based upon an outreach that we did to all the stakeholders last year, which asked them, what are the key things about CEQA that you would like to see changed? And the most consistent and virtually overwhelming objections to CEQA that these folks asked us to do was to speed up the process. Because one of the biggest objections that everybody has, the business community, the environmental community, our local jurisdictions, anyone who's involved with CEQA, is the process is too slow and it is too cumbersome. And it makes it difficult, and time is money for those who want to develop, and time is money for all of those who are involved in the process. What can we do to make the process more efficient and make it more accessible? This bill is the result of that input that Senator Hill and I received as we sent this out. He at the time was the chair of the Senate Environmental Quality Committee, and I as the still senator who is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This measure does two things. First, it explicitly authorizes the lead agencies at the request of the project applicant. It is totally up to the project applicant to prepare the record of proceedings during the CEQA process. Now, most CEQA applicants know when there is going to be an objection to their proposal. It is up to them to decide whether they want to have the record prepared contemporaneous with the process. We know this saves anywhere from 6 months to a year, because if you wait until the process is over and then request that the record be prepared, it can take anywhere from 6 months to a year. So at the discretion of the applicant, they can say, oh, we know there's going to be trouble, and we would like you, whoever is the party that's going to be doing the record, to prepare it now. That's all that does. And it's an optional provision. I want to stress that. It's optional. But it could save certain project proponents this enormous amount of time and money, because we know that time is money. A lot of people are borrowing money to get a project going, and they start paying as the bell is sounded. And yet the delays associated with the lack of time or the amount of time it takes, a lack of expeditiousness in preparing the record, that they are losing money in the process. And as the analysis points out, concurrent preparation is not specifically prohibited under current law, but it has only been authorized for certain projects. This will give the project applicant the option to go ahead and get it prepared quickly. Second, the bill expands the online CEQA database currently operated by the Governor's Office of Planning and Research to include copies of all CEQA documents, thus forming a true statewide CEQA clearinghouse. Right now, the CEQA process is still largely paper-based. Information that is posted online is often buried deep within agency or project proponent websites, and this provision will simply bring CEQA into the 21st century and expedite the process by increasing transparency and providing the public with an easy-to-use universal point of entry into the CEQA process. And in fact, this provision alone is estimated that it could save state agencies between $250,000 and $500,000 a year on an annual basis. This bill also requires that the Office of Planning and Research report to the legislature by July of next year on how it plans to implement that database, and again on July 1, 2018 on the status of their implementation, so we can keep track of how this is going. We all know that IT in the state of California has been an embarrassment. That to get things online, to get them so that there's that transparency, has been one debacle after another. We have talked with OPR. We have explained the goal of this function, and they are now, with the passage of this bill, and again those timelines that we're requesting, will have to move forward on this and get the job done. If you don't get these timelines, it takes forever. So that's why we put that in the bill. This is a common sense measure that will help expedite the CEQA process, provide transparency, save money while protecting the integrity of the process. We've been working with various groups. The bill is supported by the Association of Environmental Professionals, the American Planning Association, the Cal Labor Fed, the State Building Construction Trades Council, the Planning and Conservation League. We have removed opposition from some of the big folks. The Chamber of Commerce has taken its opposition off, the BIA. This is not a Christmas tree. And we know that there are those who are opposed because they would like to see us just turn CEQA on its head or on its feet. That is not the intention and design of this bill. It's to take CEQA and make it a better bill. If somebody wants to do more or less, that's another bill. This bill is a common sense measure, and I would urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support, 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I want to thank the Senator for her work on CEQA legislation. Convening a large group of stakeholders has been very important, and getting all points of views to reflect upon this legislation, something that we could agree on. It is a common sense measure when it talks about the effectiveness and reducing some of the perceived burden that some of the applicants may have when going through an application process for a project. This bill directly deals with that. It does provide the same type of efficiencies that are currently given to stadiums or arenas. So if an applicant so chooses to access this type of efficiency, they can do so. And with CEQA and the CEQA process, certainty is very important, plus also the timelines to make sure that the projects move forward, but also identifying the environmental concerns that may be brought about by the community without jeopardizing that type of ability. So we want to thank the Senator, we want to thank the committee, and respectfully urge your aye vote.
Mr. Chair and members, Monica Miller on behalf of the County of Santa Barbara. We're in support. Definitely want to thank the author for all of her work, working with the stakeholders, working through the issues, and we hope that you will support this measure today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, also here in support. CEQA is a very important law to our unions because it's about protecting our members both at work and at home in their communities. And we really appreciate the efforts of the Senator to look for consensus, a consensus approach, and look for ways to make CEQA work better for all sides and for all practitioners. So we're here in support.
Good afternoon. Victoria Rome with Natural Resources Defense Council in support.
Julie Snyder representing Planning and Conservation League, also in support.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Paul Gonzalez representing the city of Camarillo in support.
Matt Klopfenstein with the Association of Environmental Professionals in support.
Apologies for not getting our letter in on time, but California League of Conservation Voters in support. Kelly.
Yeah. Linda Kropp, Environmental Defense Center in support.
Catherine Phillips, Sierra Club, California in support.
Leah Chang from Environment California in support.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? To the committee. There is a motion to do pass to appropriations from Mr. Stone and a second by McCarty, Rendon, one of the guys over there. Any other comments from the committee? Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to lay off your bill today. I think you're definitely moving in the right direction, but I'm fearful that the public is going to take this as we did some great CEQA reform, and I think this is a step in the right direction. But there's still, I think, a lot more that needs to be done on CEQA. And as I've mentioned before, CEQA was a great bill originally, but it's been used by labor, by business, by environment as a tool to block or stop good projects. And I think that there needs to be some weighing in on how that is used as a pawn in many of these situations. So I'm going to lay off today. I may give it an aye vote on the floor, but I do appreciate you tackling this. This is something I looked at when I first came and actually started a CEQA bill and then realized how difficult it is. So I'll be laying off today, but I commend you on your work, and I look forward to maybe being able to support it on the floor.
Thank you.
Well, as chair, I would just comment that all of us that are legislators are driven crazy when we have people who come out in opposition to our bill because not of what the bill does, but because they want the bill to do more. So I would hope that we would view with empathy this situation. The opposition has written a letter that essentially says, you know what, we're not going to argue against what's in the bill, but we're going to argue against what's not in the bill. Or argue for what's not in the bill. I think we should be deciding on the merits of the bill itself, not what hypothetically could be placed in it. And the chair's recommendation is aye. Call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Dowley?
No voting.
Garcia? Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
No.
Harper, no. McCarty?
Aye.
McCarty, aye. Rendon?
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wood?
Aye.
Wood, aye.
6 vote. Your bill is out.
Thank you very much.
And one
more?
left to go.
Good afternoon to the Honorable Chair and members of the committee again. First, I want to thank the committee for its extremely thorough and thoughtful analysis, and I will accept the amendments suggested in the analysis and will continue working with the committee on the language, so I will accept the amendments as author's amendments. We're back to the oil spill. This is a measure that we're calling the Rapid Oil Spill Response Act. Again, the area I represent, the Santa Barbara Ventura coasts, are a valued and extraordinary both economic and, I say, spiritual engine for the state. Anyone who comes up to see us and visit us there, I think, understands what an extraordinary place this coast is, and the efforts that have been made to maintain it as such for the enjoyment of everyone. So back in 1969, we had this horrific oil spill that blackened our pristine coastline. It was a wake-up call. It spawned the modern version of Earth Day and the modern environmental movement. Now, as I had mentioned in the earlier bill discussion, we are very sensitive to oil spills. We've had several since then, but the oil spill that we just had on May 19th really struck a chord, and a recognition that no matter what you do with drilling for oil, it is just not safe. It can be safer, but as long as we drill, as long as we transport oil, there is the possibility and the probability that there will be a spill. So what do we do about this? Well, we can start by not reinventing the wheel. In the wake of the Exxon Valdez spill, a very effective program was created for Prince William Sound that enables local fishing vessels and crews to immediately respond to oil spills. Now, we know local fishermen. They know the tides. They know the currents. They're usually right there in the water fishing at the time when one of these disasters occurs. In the case of the oil spill in May, and I think in the case of any oil spill, early containment is the key to successfully dealing with a spill. We have that problem if you think about fires. If you can contain a fire at its initial stages, you can keep it from spreading. The same thing is true of an oil spill. So local fishermen are logically the most the best suited to immediately respond to an oil spill since they're on site. They know the water, the currents, and they are interested in protecting their economic interests in the ocean. If California had a program similar to the one in Prince William Sound, then a more comprehensive response could have started at least 6 hours sooner. At least 6 hours sooner. We know at least 6 hours. And after our hearing the other day, it could have been sooner than that. It would have reduced the negative impacts on our ocean, on our beaches, on our wildlife, and on our economy. We need to incentivize faster oil spill cleanup by only allowing the current penalty offsets for spilled oil to be given for oil recovered within the first 2 weeks of the spill. Currently, offsets are allowed for all oil collected, regardless of when it gets cleaned up. Well, we know that you can't clean it all up. We know that some of it just by its own weight goes down to the bottom of the ocean, that it impacts the fish and the creatures that live there, and they absorb it. It affects their well-being. They pass it on to the next generation. It becomes a problem for health because we ingest those species, and many of them have oil remnants, which we all know is just something that is not healthy for any of us. So we need to incentivize companies moving faster to clean up spills if there's a financial clock that's ticking. And finally, peer-reviewed science cited in this committee's analysis has concluded that little to no evidence exists for the claims that dispersants reduce the impacts of oil on shorelines, or that they reduce the impact to birds and mammals on the water surface. Indeed, spilled oil combined with dispersants is significantly more toxic than oil left to physically disperse on its own. Dispersants are both ineffective and cause significant environmental harm, which is why Prince William Sound has banned their use. Unfortunately, until we wean ourselves off of oil, we're going to keep drilling for it, and we're going to keep spilling it. This measure, SB 414, is necessary to make sure that our response to these inevitable catastrophes is the most robust we can muster. Again, on behalf of the people of this community, on behalf of the thousands of people who had wanted to recreate over the beginning of the summer at Refugio Beach, at El Capitan Beach, two of the most extraordinary public beaches probably in the country, who were sent away, who are unable to enjoy the family time, the recreational time, to the fishermen, to the hotel owners, the restaurants, the people who are there to serve a robust economy and visitor and tourism industry. I would urge your aye vote for this measure.
This is 2 minutes each.
Thank you. I'm Linda Kropp, Chief Counsel of the Environmental Defense Center from Santa Barbara, and I'm going to cut out a lot of what I was going to say to just give you my personal experience. I was at the beach the first day of the oil spill, and it was just blanketed in oil, and this was several hours after the spill. I was there till 10 p.m. at night, and the waves were just taking that oil out to sea, and that continued all through the night until the next day. The response in earnest didn't really happen until probably 24 hours later, and probably most of the oil from the beaches was washed out to sea and will never be recovered. So that's why we support SB 414. Time is of the essence when there's an oil spill, and SB 414 will expedite the response by using the fishing personnel and vessels that are already out on the water and nearby. We learned that we don't have very good shoreline response for offshore platform spills. We have these clean seas vessels that have to respond within a certain period of time. That clean seas boat was out there the first afternoon. It could not do anything because the oil spill emanated from a buried pipeline on shore, and the oil was just getting washed out to sea. We also support the fact that this bill bans dispersants, which can actually increase impacts from oil spills, that it incentivizes rapid cleanup, that it requires the best achievable technology and equipment to be used. As the Senator mentioned, we try to prevent oil spills from happening, but to the extent that we have a lot of development off of our coast, we need to make sure that response is timely and as complete as possible. Thank you for your support.
Good afternoon. Victoria Rome with the Natural Resources Defense Council, also here in support of SB 414. We feel this bill is needed to improve response time following an oil spill and incentivize faster cleanup with the use of best available technology. California does not currently have adequate infrastructure in place to quickly and efficiently contain an oil spill. Proactive measures are necessary to ensure prompt cleanup using methods that will not harm wildlife or coastal habitats in the process. As mentioned, this bill would authorize OSPR to train knowledgeable local fishermen to act as a first line of defense, deploying oil containment devices that provide shoreline protection. There's no reason in this day and age that a bucket and shovel should still be the standard items used to clean up contaminated shorelines. Unfortunately, technological advances in oil spill response, containment, and cleanup have not been thoroughly investigated. Under the bill, OSPR would be required to look into potential cleanup tools and report to the legislature about best available technology. In addition, halting the use of dispersants until the EPA updates federal regulations on the testing and efficacy of these products will prevent any undesirable consequences. In light of the many benefits this bill has to update the antiquated structure of oil spill cleanup and prevention in California, we urge your aye vote on SB 414. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support?
Kim Schneider, on behalf of Heal the Bay, in strong support. Thank you.
Environment California in support.
Mark Fenstermaker for Audubon, California in support.
Ricky Russell, California Coastkeeper Alliance in support.
Kelly Dillon on behalf of California League Conservation Voters in support.
Katrina Robinson on behalf of Ocean Conservancy in support.
Hans Cole, Patagonia in support.
Catherine Phillips, Sierra Club, California in support.
Witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair, members, Brian White with KP Public Affairs here on behalf of Western States Patrolmen Association. We don't have a position on the bill at this time, but we do have significant concerns that we've raised in our letter to the committee, particularly with respect to provisions in the bill that we think might duplicate or conflict with some of the existing requirements under the OSPR program. With respect to the mandatory vessel of opportunity language in the bill, we have concerns that the current language would impose a mandate on OSPR to use contracted fishing vessels and crews as a way to provide immediate response, but without providing clarity on how this program would actually work. How will it be managed? Who will maintain and operate the skimmers? Who will endure readiness? And how will this be done on a consistent basis? This would also be a statewide program that would not consider some of the other existing voluntary programs already out there, one of which is in your district, Mr. Chairman, the Fisherman Oil Spill Response Team, our program in Santa Barbara. Under this program, local fishing boats may be used to assist in deployment, recovery, and towing of containment and boom and open ocean shore techniques. Would placing a mandate on the state to have a mandatory fishing vessel program conflict with this program? Would it supersede it? I think those are some questions that not only the fishermen would like to know, but probably even OSPR if this bill were to become law. And then it's also not clear how this bill would actually be funded. Would it be an increase in OSPR fees, existing fees? Clearly that would be a concern for our members if it were going to increase fees. With respect to the prohibition on dispersants as a tool in oil spill response, we do have significant concerns about this provision. In the event of an oil spill, I think we all know it's pretty clear you can't do complete recovery of oil. It's very rarely does it happen. It's very challenging. You have a number of factors, whether it's wind, you have turbulence, you have volume issues, the type of oil that's spilled. Not allowing for unified command procedures to use dispersants would basically put a straitjacket on them to use this tool if they need to use it, particularly if there were an agreement between federal, state, and local communities that maybe dispersants should be used. And, of course, they would be contacting with federal EPA to see if those dispersants were safe or not. OSPR already has authority under existing law to determine the impacts of health impacts of dispersants. So putting another straitjacket on them to not use dispersants seems it's inconsistent with existing law. We should let the existing law stand on its own and wait for EPA to actually come out with its study that's currently underway. And finally, with respect to best available technology, I think the committee amendments try to get at that issue. We just wanted to note that there's a difference between best available technology and best achievable. Available, of course, generally indicates that it's the perceived best technology that can be attained regardless of price, whereas achievable actually means that it's actually considered the cost, utility, overall effectiveness, and the benefits of other technologies. We would be concerned if you put in statute something that would prescribe a certain technology and then it's proven that technology is not the best going forward. So in conclusion, we just want to recognize that these are just some of our concerns that we have at this time. We'd happy to work with the committee, the author, to address these concerns. I think the dispersant one is probably the most troubling. And with that, we'd take a look at the amendments and see how we shake forward going forward. Thank you.
And I just will take Chair's prerogative to say that the first issue that you brought up, we viewed as a drafting error. We included it in the amendments to clarify that that is a requirement to get an OSRO of the oil or the principal, the responsible party, not OSPR. So I hope that is clear after the amendments.
We'll take a look.
Ask you to take a look at those. Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Berg with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, and we represent the dry cargo ocean carriers that, by nature of carrying fuel, we fall under the Lempert-Keene Sea Strand Oil Spill Act. We also do not have a formal position on this. We're still evaluating the bill. We also understand there's some amendments coming, so we'll continue to look at those. We have had the opportunity to talk to Senator Jackson's office as well as your committee staff, and I think, we're going to continue to work with everybody moving forward. I just wanted to point out here, though, today that our main concern is, at least from what I've seen, is regarding the BAT, or Best Achievable Technology provisions of the bill. We also strongly agree Best Achievable Technology is a cornerstone of the spill prevention program. And we also agree that a regular assessment of BAT is warranted. In fact, rather than what you specify in the bill about having a one-time report to the legislature, we would suggest something be done on a semi-regular basis, because technology is constantly progressing and evolving rapidly. But we would caution against codifying or hardwiring specific technologies into either legislation or regulation. In terms of spill response, there are many variables, and it really calls for a flexible suite of strategies. So currently, right now, OSPR sets planning standards for the plan holders. Essentially, they have to perform at a certain level. Those standards are assessed regularly by OSPR and verified through drills and exercises, both announced and unannounced. That essentially allows a much more flexible and dynamic strategy for responding to spills. So we believe that you could hamstring yourself by specifically trying to narrow in and codify specific types of technologies that might not necessarily be applicable. As an example, listening to the informative hearing on Friday and listening to Clean Seas describe their operation, they were in fact using what they consider best achievable technology for their skimmers, which are actually not the same types of technology that are listed in the bill. So I just think that's something we want to point out to the committee, and we're anxious to work with everybody going forward.
To the committee, I will note that the amendments note that the requirement to evaluate that technology, not to use it. But there was obviously a lot of eye-openers from that hearing, including the fact that none of the response vessels in Santa Barbara had the ability to operate at night, which is something going back decades ago. There were cleanup vessels that were operating at night. So that is just one glaring issue, but among many. Mr. Stone.
Thank you. And I think one of the things, too, that came very clear in that hearing that was held in Santa Barbara was that there was a response that was initiated both identifying the issue, and then once the issue was identified, but it didn't seem to be coming from the owner of the pipeline to any great degree. So unfortunately, until the pipeline owners have, in fact, the best control technology, which very clearly they don't, to be able to understand and manage issues in their own pipeline, then having these external systems to be able to then go and clean up the mess are going to be absolutely critical to be able to address the issues as they come out. Because the length of time before a lot of the oil was picked up was adding to the detrimental impact of that spill, regardless of how much oil was actually leaked into the ocean from there. So making sure that the response has the best available technology, but also that the operators have the best available technology is really critical to minimizing the impacts of a spill. And I think this is a very appropriate step in the right direction, and I'd like to move the bill.
Second. Motion by Stone, second by Garcia. And we have a question from Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for bringing this bill forward. There is a lot of criticism in this building of the procedure of gut and amend, I think justifiably so. But relative to the calendar and the rules of the legislature, this strikes me as an entirely appropriate use. We had an oil spill last month. We are learning in real time about how we can improve our processes and improve our procedures. So taking a vehicle and amending it and working in real time to do that strikes me as a great use of that legislative opportunity. At the same time, because although this bill is in its second chamber, it is really just starting in the deliberation process. And I thank you for taking the amendments that you've taken already. I do have some concerns about locking in technology versus making sure we have unified command on the site of a spill, and making sure that the professionals on the ground at the time have the ability to use the best options available to them at the time. So I am going to support the bill today. I want to support the bill. I will continue to monitor it as the committee staff and the other committees work on it. And thank you for bringing it forward.
I want to thank you, too, I would much rather not have had to gut and amend a bill. But we had this oil spill. No one expected it. No one wanted it. No one still wants it. But I think that we have been working, and I want to, again, thank the committee. I think the amendments are very positive. I'd like the opposition or those who are uncertain to take a look. I think we've addressed many of the concerns. I'm very prepared to continue working to make it a better bill. I would like to say, though, on dispersants, since the beginning of OSPR, they've never used them. And so I think it's fairly well accepted that this, although at one point may have been sort of a knee-jerk reaction to use them, we've acknowledged that they are not a best approach to this. And I think on behalf of the community that is very concerned, we know that when they were used up in Alaska that they caused more problem than they helped, that is the reason that we put that in. But in terms of doing some of the other efforts to make sure that we can address this problem going forward, I think it really was, we learned a lot from this hearing. Hopefully we'll learn a lot from what happened so that we don't have this happen again. That's really the goal. So.
And just one quick follow-up question. When you speak of dispersants in that last sentence, are you speaking specifically of chemical dispersants or agents more generally, including biologic?
At this point, there are some dispersants that don't have a definition. They aren't necessarily defined in the way as the chemical dispersants are. So there are other things. They don't necessarily call them dispersants, but they are, as you mentioned, perhaps biological elements. And those I don't think we cover in the bill. The goal is to keep what we know is not, that what we know is detrimental. We want to keep that out of the process going forward. That's when we address dispersants. That's what we're talking about is chemical dispersants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I will, on that note, just say that this is something the committee has asked for the author to work on further clarification about what is covered as a dispersant under the definition of the bill. So that we have assurance from the author and our staff that will be an ongoing project. Mr. Dolly. Oh, I answered the question for you. All right.
Again, this is a work in progress. We acknowledge it is a gut and amend, but based upon the fact that we did not anticipate this event. And once you have something happen, you are not serving your constituents or the state well if you ignore it. And what we're trying to do is address a problem in the best way we can to make sure it doesn't happen again. And with that, I'll ask for your aye vote.
Great. That was great close. Any other questions or comments from the committee? The chair's recommendation is aye. I just want to thank the author for working on this issue. She has a series of bills, for the most part, on cleanup and response and on the regimen for inspections. And I have a companion bill that is on the best achievable technology, since we've heard a lot about that today, best achievable technology for pipeline safety, including automatic shutoff valve systems and other things that were lacking from the pipeline in question, line 901. And so I just want to thank the senator for working with me on this and for contributing to a great hearing on Saturday. If any of you have just a disposable 4.5 hours of time, you can watch what you missed. But the gist of it, 5.5.
And it was actually Friday, but it almost went into Saturday, yes.
But it does raise serious questions. I think it's pretty clear from the timeline that the oil company did not comply with state law on the response required in notification. And, of course, that delayed boats being deployed, which meant that most of the cleanup was the next day because of what is an important state law to ensure timely cleanup of these spills. And so thank you for helping to work that we could minimize this in the future. Chair's recommendation is aye.
Assemblymember Williams?
Aye. And this is due pass to GO.
As amended.
As amended, GO.
Williams, aye. Daly?
Aye.
Daly, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
No.
Harper, no. McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Rendon?
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wood?
Aye.
Wood, aye.
That's 8 votes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members.
Trifecta.
And I'm still, Assemblymember Harper and I are still consistent. I have yet to get an aye vote from him, but we're working on it.
Better switch on that. Some real legislation. Repeal some of this crap around here.
Do we have add-ons? Just for, I'll keep the roll open for add-ons. This is Senate Bill 788 by McGuire. Assemblywoman Garcia. Chair's recommendation is aye. Aye. Senate Bill 788. Garcia, aye. And Senate Bill 122 by Jackson. Chair's recommendation is aye. Due pass to appropriations. Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. That concludes the business of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee. Thank you.